So hello YouTubers, it is of course me, Trollface the Man. And basically today I haven't done a video in a while, and I wanted to do an update video, but I really don't have anything to do the video on. I am currently in the process of working on a project video, of working on a chemistry video, and working on a different demonstrational video, but they're all sort of held up at this point. One of the big announcements I want to make is I just got a new $300 microscope for this channel, a very high-powered microscope that is going to have a lot of utilization and potential applications, and a little bit more that I'm going to go into detail in the future. It's 40 times to 2,500 times microscope, and I did a video where I took some of my blood and I looked at it, and I would have already put that video out, but there's a few things in my blood that I wasn't quite sure what it was, and I asked an expert that actually knows more about blood to potentially give his input, so that way when I actually show the video and I talk about the blood we look at under the microscope, I actually know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm not super experienced in that field. But today, at least, what I'm going to do is, this is my computer for my channel. This is one I built 3 to 3.5 years ago. Basically, this was an amazing machine for the time. But since then, it's shown its age, and though it's still quite impressive, I'm probably going to be upgrading it soon. Specifically, I'm going to try and get a 1080 Ti hybrid, or I'm going to wait for the next series of graphics cards to come out and replace that. But when I originally built this PC, the 3.5 or 3 years ago, I put on Artic Silver 5 as a thermal compound. It's been 3 to 3.5 years now, and it is definitely due time for me to replace this thermal compound because it just degrades over time. Plus, I found out that the Artic Silver 5 isn't as an amazing compound as I once thought it was. First, I'm going to go over the specs of this PC real quick. Basically, it has 64 gigabytes, 1600 megahertz DDR3 RAM. It has a 4930K hex-core Intel i7 processor. Traditionally 3.4 gigahertz. I had it overclocked to 4.3 gigahertz. It has an H105 liquid cooling system. It has a 750 G2 Supernova EVGA 80 plus gold modular power supply unit. It has and it's going to be a little bit hard to see, but SATA Samsung 850 EVO 256 megabyte SSD, which is my primary boot drive for the operating system. It has, in these drive bays over here, which you can't really see because you have to take them out from the front, but it has a 2 1 terabyte hard disk drive and 1 4 terabyte backup drive. It obviously has, as you can see right here, 3 EVGA GeForce GTX 960 graphics cards. They are super clocked edition or whatever the heck it is. And basically 2 of them are in SLI. SLI is garbage. Don't recommend it. Just spend the money to get one good graphics card, because I've had nothing but problems with SLI. Well, anyways, 2 of these in SLI, and 1 of them uses a PhysX render engine. Now, this isn't for gaming. If that was for gaming, this would be a complete waste. What it's specifically for is for rendering, and rendering in Blender, in which case I can use all 3 of these GPUs as separate GPUs, not SLI or not like any other type of voodoo witchcraft for that. And like I said, SLI, nothing but problems with it. Had stability issues, and to be honest, it really doesn't get you any performance increases in almost any games unless they specifically support it. SLI, in my opinion, is junk, and GeForce and I believe AMD are basically doing away with SLI and Crossfire because of how little utilization it actually has. Originally in this computer I had an R9 290. I upgraded to these a few years back, and since then I'm stuck with them, but I'm going to try and upgrade to probably a 1080 Ti hybrid edition, or I'm probably going to wait for the next generation of graphics cards to come out. The 1080 Ti hybrid edition would basically wipe the floor with these 3 cards in rendering or anything along that lines. Plus, I would just get in general, a lot better performance in any games I play. Because, once again, SLI is garbage and one of these graphics cards can't even be utilized. Let's get on to the main point though. I am replacing the thermal interface material, otherwise called TIM, for my CPU here. I used Arctic Silver 5 a long time ago, which at the time I thought was like pretty much the best. Turns out, not really. Currently, when I checked things from Tom's Hardware, a bunch of different benchmarks for different thermal interface materials, Icy Diamond was just about the best. Now, the only one I've seen that came ahead of it in standard thermal interface materials, as in like paste, was Grizzly. It was a marginal difference though. And basically, the Grizzly and the Icy Diamond performed about the same, but Arctic Silver 5 was way down the list. You're talking about a couple of Celsius degree difference between the Arctic Silver 5 and this. And those couple of Celsius might not be the biggest difference in the world, but I'd still rather go with the better thermal paste, and seeing as they basically cost the same amount of money, it just seems like a smart investment to me. Now, I say standard thermal interface materials, they have the ones that are basically metals that you can put, like gallium based and stuff, that you can put on your CPU and then put your heatsink on there, but what that actually does is it fuses the heatsink and the heat spreader, or sometimes it's direct applied right to the IC chip, but it fuses them together. And from what I've seen, it was only like a 1 or 2 Celsius difference, and typically it ruins your heat sink, it ruins your heat spreader, or it can damage your CPU, but basically it's like a permanent thing. So for as far as non-permanent solutions go, Icy Diamond look like the best currently. Now, it's kind of funny because I didn't realize this at first, but I'm going to put this off to the side. But you would think Diamond wouldn't really have very good thermal conductivity. As it turns out, it has, and what I'm doing is I'm just loosening these one at a time, a little bit at a half a turn until I get all the tension off. So if I were to loosen one of them all the way, if I were to loosen one of them all the way, at first I could potentially torque the cooler, the motherboard, the heat spreader, and any number of other things. So I'm only turning about a half a turn. But basically, the Diamond actually has a way better thermal conductivity than copper. 5 times more than copper, even I think about 5 times more than silver itself. So Diamond's actually kind of amazing for thermal conductivity, and it doesn't conduct electricity, which is kind of a weird thing, but usually when something is really thermally conductive, it's also electrically conductive. So it seems like all the tension's off, so I'm just unscrewing them basically as I would normally now. But yeah, when something usually is highly thermally conductive, it's highly electrically conductive. Not in the case of diamonds. So what the Icy Diamond is it's actually a paste material that's comprised of 92%, this is what they claim, 92% synthetic purified diamond. So it's actually like really super fine diamond powder suspended in some type of paste. It's very thick, but it seems like it does a pretty dang good job. From what I hear, it has a burn-in period of about 12 to 24 hours, which means that you have to run it for approximately that long before it reaches its full potential. And that's what I'm going to do, because I actually took some heat test before I'm replacing this Arctic Silver 5, and now when I replace it with this Icy Diamond. So I'm going to let it have the full burn-in period. Now, there is one other paste that supposedly outperforms Icy Diamond, which is, I think it's called Shin Etsu. But I haven't actually seen any real, I would say, validatable test on it. It does look like it has some good performance, but it's not something that you can just find in any computer store anyways. The Icy Diamond, on the other hand, is. It's about $7 for this tube, which so far has gotten me, this is going to be my 3rd computer application and at least one application for a graphics card. Now, if you ever have a problem with like your heat sink not coming straight off, this is of course a water block, but if you ever have a problem with it not coming off right away, the worst thing you can do is pull straight up because it can damage the components. If possible, what you do, if you can, is you actually wiggle it left and right just slightly, and it'll break the seal because the thermal interface material can create like a suction cup effect. This, however, seems to be coming off pretty easily. And we can see right here, this is the old Arctic silver. It actually surprisingly still has what seems to be most of its gumminess intact. I've taken apart some heat sinks, or taken off some heat sinks, and found that after 5 years, your thermal interface material turns into like cracked mud. I'm going to be using some isopropyl, which is alcohol. This is 70%, just to clean off the heat spreader on the CPU very well. And I'm going to do the same for my water block here. Now, the thing that's nice about the Arctic Silver 5, or excuse me, the thing that's nice about the Icy Diamond is, unlike the Arctic Silver 5, it doesn't conduct electricity. And the reason why this is significant is because if you, by chance, were to get Arctic Silver 5 on your motherboard, across two components, it can cause a short circuit, which can either damage your motherboard or cause system instability. The Icy Diamond does not have any electrical conductivity, or if it is, it's very, very marginal. And because of that, if you were to accidentally get the Icy Diamond on your electrical components, you're still going to be okay. So I'm just getting this heat block cleaned off right here. Honestly, like I said, looking at this Arctic Silver 5, it looks like that it stayed pretty good. I mean, it's not like burnt on there or anything like that. It seems like overall it's coming off very easy, and that it did its job. Now, many people have 100 different ways they suggest putting on thermal compound. Well, the way I used to do it was the spread method, where you put it on and then you spread it out and then you put your heatsink on. But Linus Tech Tips tested a whole bunch of different methods. They tried putting a line of thermal paste, a dot, the spread method, all these different things, and they honestly found out it meant nothing. In all their tests, the only time that they actually seen an increased temperature was when you put too little thermal paste on. So basically, you can just put a big dot on there, press your heatsink down, and as you press it down, it will spread out the thermal paste itself. That's all the instructions say to do for this too, is just put a pea-sized drop on there and then let the heatsink spread it itself. Don't take off the heatsink and look at the spread, because if you do, you'll introduce bubbles, which will decrease the performance of the thermal interface material. So I'm going to put on here about a pea-sized drop. Now this is extremely thick. Like I said, it is 92% diamond powder. And because of that, it looks like I'll probably get about 4 computer applications total out of this. Because of that, it is very viscous when applying. So right now, all I should need to do is just put my CPU water block back on. Push it down just a little bit. And I'm going to actually use the tightening of these screw heads to further spread out the tin, or the thermal paste. So instead of me like pushing directly down on my CPU, which could potentially, or my CPU block, which could potentially damage it, I am using the brackets to do that for me. The reason why that's smart to do is because you actually have, at least for this specific water block, you have a bracket on the backside that spreads the weight or the pressure across a large area of your motherboard, and the area that specifically is designed to take that pressure instead of just pushing down directly on top. Like if I were to just push down directly on top of this water block, where I could be straining the CPU by putting uneven pressure. So that's not a good thing to do. I'm going to tighten these by hand until I start feeling some tension. I'm going to tighten them semi-evenly too. I don't want to tighten one too much, because if I did that, once again, uneven pressure could potentially damage the CPU, the water block, or the motherboard. So I'm feeling about the same amount of tension now on each of these heads. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take one head, tighten it about one turn, go to the next one, tighten it about one turn, go to the next one, tighten it about one turn, go to the next one, tighten it about one turn. And like I said, the reason to do this is to keep the pressure spread across the heatsink, the motherboard, and the block fairly evenly. It actually looks like it's tight. This can tighten a little bit more. A little bit more. Yeah, I mentioned that I got a microscope, and like I said, basically I made a $300 investment to buy said microscope, because I figured it would be something we can use for this channel. And it's a lot of money, and it might be money I didn't have really, but I actually bought another one of those microscopes at the same time as a gift for my friend for Christmas, so I figured it was now or never. So I got the microscope, and I'm actually fairly happy with it. It is quite amazing. Like I said, the 2500 times zoom is crazy, because I was actually spending the other day looking at bacteria in yogurt, which is completely fascinating. I do plan to show that off in the future. But for now, like I said, I'm very happy with the purchase. And I want to say too, I made this computer a long time ago specifically for the purpose of rendering videos for YouTube. That's why it has so much RAM. The 64 gigabytes of RAM would be basically pointless when you take like regular gaming applications into consideration, especially seeing as most games are still built off of a 32-bit architecture, which means that they can only utilize about 3.5 to 4 gigabytes of RAM tops. So basically anything, even the 64-bit architecture games, you still would only need about 16 gigabytes of RAM. This specifically was built for video rendering, and it makes a decent gaming rig too, I'm not gonna lie. But this was my baby. Now, I never thought I would say it, but I think I might actually, for my next build, switch over to the Ryzen series, because a couple of their CPUs are actually performing better than the Intel CPUs, but for half the price. But we'll have to see how compatibility continues to go for them. But the thermal interface material is all swapped. I basically told you what is inside this computer. I think I already mentioned that I have two 1 terabyte drives and a 4 terabyte backup drive. I don't know if I mentioned that, but just in case. 256 gigabyte Samsung Evo SSD over there, right here. And that is my boot drive, so I use that to boot. I use this for video storage. Typically I have a drive for recording, a drive for rendering, and then I have my backup drive or rendered stuff. And yeah, like I said, this is my old baby, but I think showing its age. Let's actually test this now. Let's see if this new thermal interface material is performing any better than the old stuff. Well, actually, correction. I'm going to run it for 24 hours, let the Icy Diamond bake in or set, and then I'm going to see if it's getting any better cooling performance. So I'll be back in a bit.
Here are a few pictures with the PC actually on. I installed UV tubes that can either be on off, or flash with sounds like music. I can demonstrate its UV properties using this radioactive green top hat. And no, that is not a metaphorical description for its color. This top hat is made with a special glass colored using uranium dioxide, so it is actually slightly radioactive. Luckily though, the type of radiation and the amounts it puts off isn't high enough to do any real damage. This glass has a unique property that the uranium in it allows it to glow green under UV light. So away from the computer, you can see it just looks like an off-green glass, but when we get it near, you can really see it shine. If you want to hear more about this glass, I made a video on it a while ago that I will link in the description and comments below. I really go into depth about the history of the glass and some of its features. So in my test, both the Arctic Silver 5 and the Icy Diamond idled at about 29 through 30 degrees Celsius or 84 through 86 degrees Fahrenheit. However, under load, the Icy takes a lead, as after running both for 30 minutes, the Arctic Silver 5 tops out at 57 degrees Celsius or 134 degrees Fahrenheit, while the Icy stays at a cool 55 degrees Celsius or 131 Fahrenheit. Not too surprising, the difference in performance between the two is rather marginal, and this isn't a make or break situation, but overall I am happy to get those extra few degrees, and hopefully I won't need to do a new swap for a few years. Thank you guys for watching, and please drop me a like if you would, and thanks to my awesome Patreon supporters that you can see a few of here. And if you would like to become my supporter and get your name on this page, please check out the link in the description below. Thank you guys for watching, and put your own PC specs in the comments below if you would like. Thank you guys, and bye!